So how, when America like finally does like go under, and I predict in 5 to 10 years, the 50 United States won't exist. We'll split off. I don't know how it's going to look. Like, how do you see China reacting with that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad that you brought up sort of China's approach to those changing world. And a big change in the world is that the United States is declining, that its empire is declining, that its economy is shrinking. Not talked about a lot, but the United States is roughly half of what it was 70 years ago, right? Roughly half of, in terms of scale, in terms of its dominance over the overall world economy. It's roughly half. It's shrunk a lot and it's contracted a lot. And it seems like every economic crisis, it contracts a little bit more, but you don't hear about it. CNBC won't do big coverage of this because that would be really scary. And it would also probably send their really snowflakey Wall Street investors through the roof to just hear about their own impudence and impotence. But really, China's approach to this whole, especially the last decade and a half of economic turbulence, has been to do what it's been doing, which is, and I'm glad you talked about like kind of buying time and kind of planning out into the future. Well, there's a reason for that. That's because China has a planned economy. China actually does set out markers. China does organize its economy in a way where it says, this is what we're going to achieve and accomplish. These are the tasks ahead. And our government is going to be very involved in making sure that it happens, regardless of whether private industry is doing it or state industries. Usually it's a mixture of both, are going forth with the plan. And so part of the plan, of course, is to build very robust ties with countries around the world, especially countries that have kind of this shared need. China once was a country that needed an incredible amount of infrastructure development. It was one of the poorest countries in the world. Now it's not, but it still has a lot of needs. It's still very poor in certain areas. Like it's never going to be it doesn't have arable land, so it needs a lot of help to maintain food sovereignty, which it does quite well. But it needs help. It needs cooperation from around the world. It needs energy because it's not an independent energy producer, and it never will be an independent energy producer. So it needs help in that regard. So China understands that in order to keep moving forward with its plans to continue to prosper, continue to meet certain social and economic objectives, right, to move forth from poverty alleviation to modern socialism, which is its goal by 2050. In order to do that, you need to have pretty peaceful, cooperative relations with every country and not to interfere in others' relations, even if, and this is what the left has a problem with, even if it's a country like Saudi Arabia, which certainly we have no qualms here of saying a human rights catastrophe, right? It's waging a war on Yemen internally. It murders journalists and does all kinds of other really, or it's a monarchy. It's a monarchy that's armed to the teeth by the United States. But China will still economically relate to Saudi Arabia because there are shared interests. And one of the things that the New York Times had to report during Biden's trip was that Joe Biden failed pretty magnificently, not just because he did a fist bump to Mohammed bin Salman, which was what got all the news, but also because Saudi Arabia, its government, whatever that is, its monarchy said, oh no, we're not going to cut ties with China. We're going to keep ties with everybody. And that is a monumental failure because the United States went in there with the objective of, one, to bully Saudi Arabia and say, pump more oil on the market, get these prices down like it always does. It does this all the time. Pump more oil in the market. We hate Venezuela over here. Just flood the market, please, right? We want to tank their economy, and it'll do you some good, right? You want money, flood the market. And then they also went to Saudi Arabia and said, Biden said, look, we will give you all the technology you want. We'll develop your economy. You don't need China. And Saudi Arabia said, well, we'll take what we can get from you, but we're not going to cut ties with China. And New York Times had to say that already China has huge investments in Saudi Arabia, especially in telecommunications, where it's built 4G, 5G technology for that country. So the approach, I think, for China will not change, right? And I don't think it's going to change unless there's an out and out war, which unfortunately is not an impossibility with the way that the United States especially is treating Taiwan and the South China Sea. The United States regular sending warships, regularly instigating and trying to promote separatism and a so-called independence movement inside of Taiwan. Both of those things, right, continuous provocations on both of those areas, just does threaten war. But short of war, China is going to continue to do what it's been doing, which is building the Belt and Road Initiative, continuing to grow that in order to both benefit from it and also help the world rise up. Because who would have thought that if other countries are not as poor, then you will also win too? That's how China views it. If Latin America, Africa, big parts of East and West Asia, if they are prospering and they have infrastructure and they can produce goods, then everyone wins, because now there is a competition based on the fact that nobody has to starve. Nobody has to, no, we don't have to think about hunger and all of these other issues, right? That still are really huge for humanity, unfortunately. So China, that's how China is viewing its overall global strategy. And should the United States out and out collapse, I do think that there will probably be many more economic collapses before that. But should that happen, should there be a real unstable situation, I think China will do what it's always done, which is say, all right, this is the new global situation. Here's how we can behave. Here's what we can do. Here's what can help us, and here's what can help the world. And I bet, just as Cuba has always lent out a hand and said, even though you want to overthrow our government, we'll help, you know, your hurricane, the residents of New Orleans who were destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, will help you if you want it. And Bush said, go screw yourself. China will do the same with the United States. You need help? Right. You know, we have a model here. We haven't had an economic crisis in 30, 40 years. If you want to understand how we've done it, we'll always be ready to talk. But nonetheless, I think that will be the approach. And really, it's the United States' own kind of suicide watch that we're all, that we're all observing, right? Like, how long until the U.S. How long can the U.S. go along in this way? Because right now it seems ungovernable. The economic situation seems it seems like it can't be ameliorated. It has, no matter how much of this kind of superficial stability it can regain, it seems like everything that happens next tends to be much worse and more grave for the economic and political, even the military situation, than what had happened prior. And that doesn't spell good news, I don't think, for the empire. And especially doesn't spell good news for anyone who thinks that this like anti-China tirade has any hope for benefits for any. There's no benefit to it, right? It's only going to hurt workers further. It's only going to hurt poor people further, no matter where they are. And so I think the point is, in order to fight this, in order to really have a robust opposition to all of the ills that are happening here, right here in the United States, we also have to take into account that the U.S. is waging an extremely counterproductive, aggressive policy of war toward China, which is right now the most important economy in the world. It's a pretty bad idea.
Yeah, nothing that we're doing makes any sense. I mean, just from a purely just economic standpoint, why would you go to war with this country that is economically like we're dependent upon? Like it doesn't. It's madness, and it's so. But America is an insane asylum. America is a cult. It's a death cult. I mean, America is just it's built on lies, and Americans have been so propagandized on all sides to think, communism is in China is just murdering millions of people and all this stuff. And, not to excuse anything that China or Russia has done. But again, I always say this, America, we're the ones bombing the shit out of people. We're the ones, like, we have the highest prison system. We have the largest prison population in the world because we have a for-profit prison system. We're 1/5 the size of China, and we have more prisoners. I mean, like, it's insane to me. And I mean, look what we've done to Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and you know, Chelsea Mann. Look how we treat journalists and whistleblowers. It's we have no room to talk. It's like the war crimes that you know, Putin is bombing Ukraine. It's awful what Putin is doing to Ukraine, but who are we? Who are we? Like, who are we? You know, we've bombed weddings and stuff in Iraq. Like, what are we? Who the hell are we to talk about any of this? Like, we're literally the. I always say we're the drug addict with face tattoos, having a meth lab in a preschool, walking into a bar, going, "You guys drink too much. You need to go to an AA meeting." Like, we're completely out of control, and it's crazy to watch. Like, it is really in America. What's so disappointing is America could be this benevolent leader. We could be talking with China like, what we should be doing is, hey, China, Russia, let's all fix climate collapse. Let's do this right now. We have the money to do this. We can help. Let's all go green. Let's get rid of, let's transition. Because the head of the Bank of England gave a speech in 2015 or 2016 saying that there was a carbon bubble, meaning all of the fossil fuel money that we have out there is this huge bubble, and we can't, the whole world is dependent upon oil. Like, there's an oil economy, the petrodollar, even the petro-yuan. It's like he talked about, we have to slowly deflate this bubble because otherwise it's going to completely collapse. But the fossil fuel industry, which is, really hand in glove with the military industrial complex, doesn't want to. If we were thinking like, we've got to get off of oil, it has to happen. And if we had real leadership, which Joe Biden's climate policy is horrible. He literally during the primary said, I'm going to have a middle ground climate policy. And we're seeing it. I don't know. Middle ground is even a little too favorable. He's signed more drilling permits on federal lands than Trump did in his first year. So we should be doing all of these things, working together. And instead we're just war. We've pushed, again, not excusing Putin's invasion, but we've pushed Russia in there. Like you said, NATO has been illegally expanding east for decades now. And, we could just be brokering peace between Taiwan and China. Like, hey, let's sit down and figure this out. Let's figure out Tibet. Let's sit down and talk about this. No, we just pump weapons in there. And of course they're going to say, no way. Imagine if there was Chinese weapons in Puerto Rico. If Puerto Rico said, we don't want to be in American territory anymore, or Guam or something like that, we would go fucking bananas. Like, America would go nuts. If there was a Russian base, there was a Russian base just selling like Russian gum on the border in Canada, we'd go fucking bananas. We would go insane. America is a crazy place. I mean, everyone talks about the Cuban Missile Crisis, but what is, again, a thing that was not told in the history classes I went to in college was, oh, by the way, we had just put missiles into Turkey, and that's when Khrushchev wanted to send the missiles here. So we've been playing this crazy game for decades. And so, it's really interesting to hear your take on this and how it's going to happen, because the economics, because, war and economics are very much intertwined. I mean, the central banks profit from war because the best part of war is everybody goes into debt. There's the debt and they get the interest from the debt. Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how this is going to shake out, and if any of us need to leave the United States. I don't know.
It's a thought on a lot of people's minds, I think, these days.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I know a lot of people, myself included, like, well, I got to get out of here. And then I'll, like, oh, but I'm going to do this show, or I'm going to tour, or I'm going to get this new job, or someone's going to buy this house or whatever. And we're all sort of kind of one foot in, one foot out, kind of hoping America self-corrects and it turns around, because there's a lot of great stuff about America. We want to stay here. We grew up here. Our family and friends are here.
Yeah.
But it's, the idea of picking up and moving to another country is a challenging one. It's not an easy thing to do, even if you have a lot of money and you make good money online or whatever, and you can just, get a digital nomad visa. It's not an easy thing to undergo.
No, definitely
So,
not. Definitely not.
Well, Danny, I really appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time to update us on this stuff. And where can people follow you? And if you've got any upcoming stories or videos or anything like that, people should check out.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. So, I mean, yeah, I've been doing a lot of work. So you can follow me at the Left Lens on YouTube. Definitely subscribe there because I have been covering this